I'd like to talk about rough sex and porn style sex, and I'm inspired by a 2 day couples webinar I'm in. These couples are doing some very deep work on the things that are causing them strife and struggle and pain in their relationships. And just from all the work I've done, learning about therapy and people's relationship problems, the problems that people have with intimacy and relating, whether they are shame filled or grandiose, walled off, passive aggressive, entitled, shut down, all of the problems, rage attacks, all comes from what happened to you as a child, what you saw as a child, and what you were allowed to get away with. And when it comes to sex, I cringe, like my whole body cringes at a lot of the porn that I see. And today I was on Twitter during the break, kind of flipping through, and I see a lot of really rough stuff with these women being like filled in all three holes by BBC, Big Black Hawks. And I have a hard time believing they like that stuff. Come on. There are so many people. I'm constantly shocked by the amount of trauma that is inflicted upon children. And people will not even realize that it's trauma. There are people who were emotionally neglected or abused, and they don't even realize it's trauma because they don't know what they didn't get, so they think it's normal. And when children are inflicted with trauma, children are very resilient, like we are resilient. We find coping mechanisms so we can survive in whatever homes we grow up in. So you have people, from a very young age who are toddlers who didn't have anyone to go to, that basically had to learn to be okay on their own, for example. And if as a child no one was there to comfort you, this is why I like to ask people if they say my childhood was fine and they're disconnected. I'll be like, well, who did you go to for comfort? Who comforted you? Who loved you and comforted you? And there's also a thing, there are parents who are really abusive. They'll hit you and put you down or make you responsible for them emotionally. But then there are also parents who are very busy with their lives. Like in my particular case, I felt loved, but my parents were very busy. My dad was always working, and my mom had to raise 3 kids and run the household and do everything. So we were sent outside to play a lot. And so, like, for me personally, what I experienced more is like an absence of support and connection. But I didn't have any abuse or neglect other than that. And when I hear some of the stuff that people have gone through, I'm like, oh my God, I can see why you ended up the way you ended up. And you're having all these problems in your relationship. But when it comes to sex, I'm a big believer that all these children who had to adapt by shutting down their emotions because their emotions were a burden, a sign of weakness or shame, or who never saw emotions growing up, now they're being sexual with someone else and they don't know how to feel. So the only sex they can have is just is genitals interacting, penises going into openings with no sensuality, or if they were actually hit, that alcoholic parents or raging parents or physically abusive parents, they will actually want sex, in my opinion. I haven't taken any sex webinars yet, therapy sex webinars. In my opinion, if they were abused as children physically, they will want sex that's abusive. That's what love feels like. Love feels like humiliation. Love feels like abuse. They don't even know how to be sensual. No one was ever sensual with them, so they're not even in touch with their sensuality. I look at some of the porn stuff, I'm like, okay, well, some of the stuff looks very painful and some of the stuff looks like something that people legitimately enjoy, but you can't tell me that a woman, I just saw today on Twitter, this little clip came up and this gorgeous little woman, petite like me, taking 3 huge penises in all 3 parts of her body. And the caption was filling all 3 holes. So disrespectful, treating her like an object. You treat a woman like an object, you have to be cut off from your emotions. Now, hey, I like a guy to fuck me hard. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be treated like some little China doll, okay? But I bring my sensuality with it. I want to kiss. I want to be turned on. I want to feel your tenderness and your aggression. And I'm into some kinky stuff. Like, I'd love my guy to watch me be fucked by some other guy. I like my hair pulled. I like to be pinned down. You know, I like a guy to just really get physical with me. So I'm not some little prima donna, but I need his sensuality. I need his emotions. I don't want to just be treated like an object in bed, and I don't want to be fucked in all 3 holes and not be warmed up. And I don't do drunk hookups. I don't do I'm saying that there are a lot of people walking around disconnected from their emotions already, which is causing pain in their relationships. And then they bring that same lack of emotion into their sexual encounters and into their parenting. When you bring it into your sexual encounters, you end up with what I think is just that porn-like stuff. And I think that original porn that was made by men who were disconnected from their emotions, what we call the patriarchy, the World War II generation, who just had to just suck it up. We have to work hard. They came through the Depression. They came through the war. There's no time for feelings. Feelings are the privilege, I think, of modern society. There was no time for feelings. You had to just work hard and suck it up. And then those are the people that made porn. And there is a great interest on the part of men the last few decades to be better fathers to their children than their parents were, and to have loving relationships with their wives. And so they're forced to open up. And the women are forced to open up too, right? But a lot of the shut down stuff really comes from the men and the patriarchy. And it's not the men's fault, it's just the culture. Whereas the women will tend to be like these people pleasers and get silently resentful and passive aggressive. I mean, it's all like we're all like on this healing journey. And that's just what I want to say about sex. I think that sex devoid of feeling, empathy, and tenderness comes from trauma. That is not healthy. That is not normal. That is not something to strive for. I think it's something to feel sad about. And I'm 60 years old. I'm an escort. If I lowered my prices, I know I would have more clients, but I do pretty well, and I do pretty well on my Just for Fans, and I don't have anything that's traumatizing. Everything that I do involves my heart, even if it's kinky. Involves my heart, involves my emotions. Like, I stay connected in my heart. Now, there are things that I do struggle with sexually, and I think, again, it comes to emotions. Like, you know, am I taking too long to come? Am I burdened in bed? You know, and like all those things. And those are some things that I'm interested in working through, because I know other people have those same thoughts as well. So I think this is a very interesting area to explore. And I'm not here to say I'm an expert. I have my life all figured out, because nobody does. Like, don't put anyone on a pedestal. Love addicts will put someone on a pedestal. That's another thing we talked about today, are love addicts. They'll put someone on a pedestal, and this is how love addiction works. I'll make a separate video on love addiction. Let me just stop this one. I'm going to call this one violent sex is acting out your trauma. That's what I think. They're acting out their trauma. And that's the same as women who get into abusive relationships over and over and keep going back. They're reliving their trauma. That's all they know. And they're not doing it on purpose. It's what all their mind knows and their emotions know. So the most effective therapies for trauma are EMDR. Bessel van der Kolk, I think, calls it the most effective research therapy for trauma. EMDR. I think it's called eye movement desensitization rapid, EMDR, something like that. What in the process, what happens is your memories, a trigger, they do some eye movement while they talk about your trigger, and it recalibrates certain neurons in your brain so that that same trigger that same input no longer creates that same trigger response, EMDR. And then the other one is inner child work. Those are the two most effective ones that I know of, and that Terry Real talks about in the course. Thank you for watching my video.